Okay, in this video I'm going to show you the last three rules in chapter 15, negation elimination, negation introduction, and reiteration. And in fact, negation elimination and negation intro are really the same rule, so that will simplify things a bit. And I'm just going to show you these rules in some proofs rather than sketching out the rules themselves first. And we'll begin by looking at this proof here on the left. Okay, so now one way to think about a proof that I haven't said before is that we can think about it as describing a very simple world. So the idea there would be that this very simple world is described by these two premises, and then anything else that follows from these premises also describes this world. Of course, if you just have these two sentences, again, it'd be a very simple world, but that's one way to think about what these sentences are doing. Okay, now in this world, just like in our world, we can't have a contradiction. So just as in our world, it can't be, both Tuesday and not Tuesday in the same place at the same time. So likewise, in our proof, we can't have a contradiction. Okay, so that's the basic idea for both negation elim and negation intro. So let's begin this proof by making an assumption. And my assumption is going to be not P. Okay, so I have that assumption, and I'm going to use it to first get not Q. Okay, so now I have here on line 4, I have not Q, that's a not sign, and here on line 2, I have Q. So I do, in this case, have a contradiction in my proof. So what that means is that something's gone wrong. And what's gone wrong is that I made this assumption not P, but since this assumption led to a contradiction, we know that not P can't be correct. Okay, so next I'm going to move this Q in line 2 down to line 5, and I do that using the reiteration rule, which is pretty simple, just R2. And I do that because I want to have not Q and Q on lines that are one right after the other. So when I have that, I have a contradiction on two lines that are right next to each other in my subproof. I can, on a new line, and back here against the main vertical line of the proof, put the opposite of my assumption. Okay, since my assumption was not P, and here on line 6 I have P, what I've done is eliminate this negation sign. So this is going to be negation elim, and then the lines are just like we do in other subproofs. We take the full range, so that's going to be 3 through 5. Okay, and we're done. This is our conclusion. All right, so again, on line 3, I made this assumption, not P. That assumption led to a contradiction, not Q and Q, and in order to use this rule, I have to put the contradiction on the last two lines of the subproof. So that's why sometimes you have to use the reiteration rule when you're using negation elim or negation intro. But in any case, I made this assumption, it led to a contradiction. So that means that since we can't have a contradiction, we can on a new line put the opposite of whatever our assumption was. In this case, P, and then we cite it like this. And in this case, since P is our conclusion, we're done. Okay, now over here on the right, so here on the left we use negation elim. Here on the right we're going to use negation intro, but it's really the same thing. So here my assumption is going to be P. And with P I can get Q here, arrow elim, 1 and 3. Okay, then if I move not Q down to line 5 using the reiteration rule, then again I have on two adjacent lines at the end of my subproof a contradiction. So that means that back against the main vertical line of the proof, I can put the opposite of my assumption. So that's going to be not P. And in this case, we didn't have a negation sign in the assumption, and we do now, so that's going to be negation intro. And again, that's going to be 3 through 5, and we're done. Okay, so negation intro and negation elim are really the same thing. It just depends if you're going from no negation sign in your assumption to a negation here, or if you're doing the opposite. If you have a negation in your assumption and you go to no negation, then it's negation elimination. Okay, let me just show you one more example. So here we have these two premises, P or Q, and if not P, then not Q, and our conclusion is P. So as my assumption, I'm going to put not P. The idea is the assumption should be the opposite of whatever you want. Okay, so we have not P. That means we can get Q. And we can also, with line 2, get not Q. Okay, so here we have our contradiction. It's actually kind of rare that you can get the contradiction on two lines that are next to each other without using reiteration, but here we did it. So on line 6, we're going to put P, the opposite of this, and that's going to be negation elim, lines 3 through 5. Okay, and we're done.